is the Banner Ravens podcast. Paul Mancano and Jonas Shaffer live on a Monday in March, the first day of the NFL's legal tampering period. We have so much news to discuss here on this episode, but first off, give us a like, give us a thumbs up, write us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and I'll read it out here in the show. If you like what you're hearing of the Banner Ravens podcast, go and share it with your friends. You could be watching on YouTube, Facebook, or X, or listening to us after the fact on any of your favorite podcast platforms. Jonas, the news today as we stand with 2.5 hours in to the legal tampering period. None of these deals can be official, a reminder, until the new league year begins on Wednesday at 4 p.m. But so far, the Ravens have re-signed Tyler Huntley, and they have signed guard John Simpson, and they have lost Tyler Linderbaum, Dre'Mont Jones, Isaiah Likely, and Jordan Stout. We are going to start, of course, with the news that Tyler Linderbaum is leaving the Baltimore Ravens. The multiple-time Pro Bowler, 25-year-old center, is signing a 3-year deal worth $81 million with $60 million in guarantees, according to multiple reports. That makes him the highest-paid interior offensive lineman in NFL history. The previous record for highest-paid center in the NFL in terms of average annual value was Creed Humphrey, who had $18 million a year. Tyler Linderbaum resets the market with $27 million a year. Jonas, Ian Rappaport of NFL Network had said that the Ravens made a strong early offer but would not match that 3-year deal. What an absolute haul Tyler Linderbaum is getting from the Las Vegas Raiders.
This is wild stuff, Paul. You come back from the combine and you hear things, and I think we were all expecting Tyler Linderbaum to eclipse $20 million per year, because if you look at just how the cap moves and what Creed Humphrey got only in August 2024, then it would make sense that Tyler Linderbaum, even if he isn't of the pedigree of a Creed Humphrey, who I think is, by wide consensus, the best center in the NFL, would have been the next guy in line to jump to the top of the line. And you hear, is it $21 million? Is it $22 million? Is it $23 million? It's definitely not $25 million. That was what Albert Breer from Sports Illustrated had reported that Tyler Linderbaum's people were either asking for, or that was the word about what the asking price might be. And then you wait for noon to come, and you're like, oh, does the fact that he hasn't already agreed to a deal mean that the Ravens have indeed been able to get him back to Baltimore? And it turns out that no, it is just the opposite. Eric DeCosta's market-setting offer was rejected and topped by a gravity-defying contract offer. I mean, $27 million is an absurd amount for a very good player. Let's be clear about that. Tyler Linderbaum has been everything that you, I think, could have asked out of for a first-round pick. Were there limitations in pass protection? Yes, but I thought it was interesting that Brandon Thorne, who, offensive line expert who we've had on the podcast before to talk about these kinds of things, in his free agency preview, tiered all the different offensive linemen who would be available. And Tyler Linderbaum, despite being the top lineman available, the top interior offensive lineman available, was not what he called an elite starter. He was in tier 2 as a very good starter. He said he's an impact run blocker, particularly in zone concepts, where his quickness, range, and ability to win angles consistently create displacement in second level access. But he said in pass protection, his smaller frame and compact build limit his ceiling when isolated against high-end interior rushers. And that is something that we've seen in some of these high leverage spots, or against some of these high big profile players. You think of just how much he and Daniel Faalele struggled last year, or I guess in 2024 against the Eagles. You even look back to the regular season finale against the Steelers and some of the dudes that they have up front. Linderbaum was not really comporting himself as you might expect from a blue chip talent. So do I think the Ravens should have made an offer that was top of the market, like Eric DeCosta said he did? Absolutely. I think his value in continuity, in leadership, in just being the guy to lead that ship in 2026 made all sense in the world. But to beat the Tyler Smith deal by $3 million per year, despite everything that we know about Linderbaum and his size and the potential for a neck re-injury, it's these are the kinds of decisions that I think Raiders fans have come to regret over the years. Just massive overspending in free agency because you haven't made the right decisions from the ground up in the team building process.
I mean, I don't absolutely hate it from a Raiders perspective. It's funny, we had ESPN's Ryan McFadden on the other day to talk about the Maxx Crosby trade. We should have just brought him right back to talk about this. And you teased the possibility, Jonas, on that episode that the Raiders could steal Tyler Linderbaum from the Ravens, and they do. A 3-year deal doesn't kill the Raiders, and they have to do whatever they can to protect Fernando Mendoza. I mean, that's their top priority. And I don't want this to turn into us kind of sounding like we're bashing the guy out the door because the Ravens didn't bring him back. Tyler Linderbaum is not a perfect player. He is a better run defender or run blocker than he is a pass blocker. But he is soon to be 26 years old, and he's a 3-time Pro Bowler who's a former first-round pick who has only missed 2 regular season starts in his career. For the concerns long-term, perhaps about his health and his neck, it has not been a huge issue in recent seasons. And Jonas, to lose him, I no, the Ravens should not have spent $27 million a year to try to keep him. That would tie up their cap situation for the next 3 years and put them in absolute cap hell, especially after they acquired Maxx Crosby. And it's going to be great when they get a comp pick. That's probably going to be a 3rd-round pick in 2027. But
If
that
they get a
doesn't.
comp pick.
If they get a comp pick, it depends on what happens the rest of free agency here. But that doesn't help them right now. Right now, they need a center. Right now, they need to replace Tyler Linderbaum, and the options out there are not great. I mean, Connor McGovern is already off the board. He's re-signed with the Buffalo Bills before free agency began. Garrett Bradbury was already traded to the Chicago Bears after Drew Dahlman retired. Cade Mays, who we talked about on our last episode, is signing with the Detroit Lions. I mean, Corey Bullock, the Ravens could bring back. He was their backup center last year. Ethan Posich, who's a veteran for the Browns, they could bring in. Luke Fortner. Like, there aren't a whole lot of options. And we'll talk about them bringing in John Simpson to try to shore up that guard spot in just a bit. But the most important thing for this Ravens team, in my mind, it wasn't getting to the quarterback. That's priority number 2. Priority number 1 is protecting your own quarterback. Maxx Crosby is a phenomenal player that the Ravens just traded 2 first-round picks for. But Maxx Crosby has only played in 1 playoff game in his career with the Raiders, and it's because they haven't had good quarterbacks, and they haven't been able to protect those quarterbacks. And we're seeing now the Raiders are realizing they would rather have somebody to protect their young quarterback than somebody who can get to the opposing quarterback. Maxx Crosby can rack up 17 sacks a year. It won't matter if Lamar Jackson is not healthy and not playing up to his best. And if you can't get an offensive line in front of him to do that, you're in serious trouble.
Yeah, my takeaway from this, my concern, if I were the Ravens, if I were Eric DeCosta, is even if I can find someone who I really like, either in free agency or in the draft, or maybe it's Corey Bullock, is when you look at that interior offensive line, which was a definite problem this year, who's going to be the adult in the room next year? Because it's not going to be Tyler Linderbaum. It's not going to be Daniel Failele. It might not be Andrew Voorhees. Emory Jones has some experience underneath him, but he barely played in year 1. So you are putting a huge mental burden and a leadership burden, depending on whatever Declan Doyle asks from these centers before a snap, on potentially a rookie, potentially a guy who doesn't have a lot of familiarity with the guy to the left of him, to the right of him. And that even doesn't begin to cover everything that we've talked about in prior pods about, like, the investment in this run game. The Ravens, if they make Keith Mitchell a low tender or a 2nd-round tender, are going to be one of the most heavily leveraged running back heavy teams in the entire NFL. And what good is all that talent in your running back room if you don't have anyone who can block a path for them up the middle? Like, I think Ronnie Stanley and Roger Rosengarten can be good in the right fit, in the right scheme, with the right fit. But like, our whole thinking for this offense and where it was headed under Declan Doyle and Dwayne Ledford, and the idea that Tyler Linderbaum would be coming back, was, all right, this is going to be an outside zone team. This is going to be a bunch of fleet-footed guys who can capture the edge and give Derrick Henry, a lot of options for holes to hit. And now we don't know. Like, now Jesse Minter saying we're not going to be exclusively a zone team at the combine makes sense. Like that they have some familiarity. Every team has familiarity with different concepts, gap schemes, pin and pull, all that kind of stuff. But what can the Ravens do now to maximize not just the pass protection for Lamar, but also the run game as well? I mean, and that's to say nothing of who's going to be their blocking tight end if they can't sign Charlie Kohler. So it is, I guess, there's a little bit of dissonance here in terms of what we thought this Ravens offensive line could look like. And now you are starting over and it's a little bit jumbled in terms of what the direction could be and what the best plan forward to maximize the kind of disparate talents that don't really overlap as cogently as we thought it might, that are now on this 2026 team.
And now you don't have a first round pick to use on a center to replace Tyler Linderbaum. Not
Well,
like
there's not a first round center in this draft.
right. Yeah. And not like there are many first round centers in any draft. I mean, Tyler Linderbaum was one of the rare first round centers to be taken. And obviously, he was the Ravens' second first round pick and taken near the end of the draft. So it's rare that you find a center that's worth taking that. But you could have used that 14th overall pick on an interior offensive lineman. You could have used it on Vanga Iwana from Penn State. And maybe if you upgrade the guard spot there, it makes life easier on whichever center you bring in there. My question, I'm not going to bash Eric DeCosta and the Ravens for not matching this deal for Tyler Linderbaum. It would have been absurd to pay him 3 years for $27 million a year. But maybe they should have tried harder to extend him. And we know they were trying. I mean, that's what Eric DeCosta has been saying for over a year now, is they've been trying to get a deal done with him. But they don't pick up his fifth-year option because they looked at the high price tag that was inflated by the fact that the offensive linemen have to share that category with tackles. They didn't want to pay the fifth-year option. They didn't want to franchise tag, not exclusively. They didn't want to transition tag Tyler Linderbaum. And now he hits the open market, and he played it absolutely perfectly. He cashed in. He got his money. I'm just a little bit surprised that the Ravens were not able to get something done with him before he hit free agency. We've seen them do it. They did it last year with Ronnie Stanley. They've done it in the past with Nnamdi Madubuike. And to let Tyler Linderbaum, after just 4 seasons with the Ravens, hit free agency and cash in with another team, it's a tough pill to swallow.
Paul, let's pull it back for one quick second. I know that we shouldn't be prisoners of the moment, and we shouldn't let what the Raiders paid for Tyler Linderbaum influence like what our own completely uninformed market value for Linderbaum would be. But that fifth-year option you just mentioned, which the Ravens declined in April 2025, would have been $23.4 million. Obviously, almost $6 million more than the average annual value of Creed Humphrey. Knowing what we know now,
yeah,
would you have paid? Would you have paid up if you were at DeCosta?
Yes. I mean, it's 1 year, but it's $4 million cheaper a year. And the problem is, you could say, well, Eric DeCosta couldn't have known then at that point that Linderbaum would hit the market and get $27 million a year. But it is your job as GM to forecast this kind of stuff. And
the only thing I will say, Paul, is that when you have an option like that compared to a multi-year contract, like that $23.4 million is guaranteed. It's fixed. There's no wiggle room. You can't negotiate it down to 15. You can't backload the bulk of a contract. So that, I think, probably was the albatross for the Ravens, considering all this stuff. Like, sure, $23.4 million is enough, or is a lot, but it's also a pretty weighty anchor in terms of what we want to do next year when, Eric made that decision in April 2025. So again, I think you and I, now seeing where the Ravens are and what Tyler Linderbaum went for, I think there's definitely more of an argument for the Ravens doing this in hindsight, but there's also some downsides that I think are maybe get a little bit lost when you see what exactly that contract is and the structure of it and everything like that.
Yeah, and at the time we would have said, boy, that's a lot of money to be paying a center. We couldn't have known at this point. So we might have been a little bit critical of their decision to pick up that fifth-year option, but it is EDC's job to forecast where the market is going, and the market seems to have changed quite a lot. in the past few hours, as all of these teams are shelling out massive amounts of money. Let's also talk about the addition of John Simpson and kind of broaden this to the entire offensive line changing, because the Ravens are making massive changes along the trenches, offensive line, defensive line, and you could argue it is warranted after what happened last year. Offensive line fell apart, crucial moments. Defensive line wasn't able to get pressure on the quarterback. But bringing in John Simpson, I don't know if that necessarily helps the Ravens protect Lamar Jackson anymore. And John Simpson was phenomenal for the Ravens 3 seasons ago. In 2023, they brought him in as an under the radar signing, and he ended up starting all 17 games at left guard. He was a bright spot. He cashes in, gets a 2-year deal from the New York Jets, and the 2 years have not gone particularly well. We didn't even have him in our free agency bracket, Jonas, which people can go back and listen to, because in part because he was so bad for the Jets the last couple of years. This is something Ravens fans are not going to want to hear, but if you go to PFF's rankings of the guards, and I know PFF isn't gospel and isn't perfect, but they rank all of the guards in 2025 and their play. He was 1 spot ahead of Daniel Falele. He was the 51st ranked guard in the NFL. And the Ravens handed him a reported 3-year deal worth $30 million. It's going to be interesting to see what the guarantees are on that contract. But Jonas, he's coming off a year where he allowed a career high 5 sacks and 29 pressures, according to Pro Football Focus. So he's 28 years old, not super old, and he has experience with the Ravens, but he did not have a good stint with the Jets.
He had a good 2024. He just didn't have a good 2025. And maybe this is an arbitrage play. Maybe you just think that you get John Simpson away from Aaron Glenn and that sinking ship in Jets land, and he will be better, certainly under Dwayne Ledford. I think like anyone who comes to Baltimore, I think will have a natural performance boost because you're working with one of the best offensive line coaches in the game. But you know, the bugaboos for John Simpson in 2023 were the same bugaboos for him in East Rutherford, in Florham Park. It's penalties, it's penalties, it's penalties. He had 11 penalties in 2023, according to PFF. He had 10 penalties last year with the Jets, and that is a problem, because what does Declan Doyle want? What does Jesse Minter want? They want explosives. What takes away explosive plays? Silly, dumb penalties, whether it's holdings or false starts or just stuff that you should get coached out of you at this point. And John Simpson's a great dude, very smart. I think it is very ironic that he came to the Ravens in 2023 from, wait for it, the Raiders. Now the Ravens have the space to pay for him because Tyler Linderbaum is going to, wait for it, the Raiders. But yeah, like I think it is an upgrade over Andrew Voorhees at left guard. I think it does clear a path for Emory Jones to go back to the right side. He played right tackle at LSU. He was practicing at left guard last year, to kind of push Andrew Voorhees. So maybe that's best for Emory in the long haul, maybe, or it could also be a potential step back for him as he tries to, get readjusted to the footwork, because it's obviously different. It's a different setup with your plant foot and your post foot and all that kind of stuff. But it's not a substantial upgrade on what the Ravens had last year, based on the tape and based on the blocking grades and the penalties and stuff like that. But when you kind of get what you pay for. $10 million is not a whole lot for a starting guard in this 2026 market.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, I probably was a little too harsh on his tenure with the Jets, because that 2024 season was a lot better than the 2025 season, and the Ravens are going to hope that they can recapture that. Also, crucial that he has been on the field for the last 3 seasons since playing with the Ravens and making all 17 starts for the Ravens in 2023. He has made all 17 each of the past few years for the Jets. I would assume that he is going to be an upgrade over Andrew Voorhees, but it would be hard not to be at this point. I'm just surprised that they went to 3 years in order to get John Simpson, but we'll see what that contract looks like. Yeah, so this signing certainly paves the way for John Simpson to be your left guard in 2026. Bump Emory Jones Jr. over to right guard, and there's a possibility that Emory Jones Jr., after basically having a redshirt year in 2025, takes a big step in his development. He was a former 3rd-round pick from LSU and is able to step into that right guard spot and be a whole lot better than Daniel Falele. But we have also seen with this Ravens team, third round picks basically get a redshirt year. The path is cleared for them to start in their second season, and they don't exactly take the baton and run with it. I mean, we saw that from Trenton Simpson. So there is a possibility that this does not work out. And I still do think the Ravens need to add along that offensive line. And now they're going to be playing with a different center because Tyler Linderbaum is gone. So just massive, massive changes across that O line.
And again, if the Ravens moves this offense like we think they will, where it's more under center, less shotgun, fewer read option stuff for Lamar, then that means you put more pressure on your offensive line to win up front because you don't have the threat of Lamar being, a ball carrier often. Like obviously he could still, have bootlegs and still have run fakes and everything where you do kind of freeze that conflict defender. But if the Ravens are moving away from Lamar Jackson being a part of this, read option attack like we kind of saw last year with the injuries and everything, and him maybe slowing down a tick, then you have to win up front. You just have to. And I don't know right now if the Ravens have anyone up front besides maybe Ronnie Stanley, who you could comfortably say is an above average run blocker. And the Browns offense last year would not have had the kind of highs that it did if not for that dominant offensive line. Like Caleb Williams took steps forward as a passer, obviously, but so much of what he did and what Ben Johnson did was premised on that run game. And if the Ravens have these games like they did last year, where you're just asking Derrick Henry to run into a brick wall up front, then that's not a good use of your time. That's not a good use of Derrick Henry's time. And you're just kind of back at square one.
Yeah. Let's talk about three more departures from this Ravens team. Edge rusher Dre'Mont Jones reportedly signing with the New England Patriots on a deal worth $39 million over 3 seasons. Punter Jordan Stout joins John Harbaugh in New York and becomes the highest paid punter in the NFL, a 3-year deal worth $12.3 million. And Isaiah Likely is following both Jordan Stout and John Harbaugh to the Giants, reportedly signing a 3-year, $40 million deal to go to the Giants. Jonas, I think the Isaiah Likely one was the most unsurprising of these three. The writing was on the wall when the Ravens extended Mark Andrews last year. They could still bring back Charlie Kolar, who is a free agent. I think the most surprising on this list, though, was Jordan Stout. Really thought the Ravens would reward somebody who was taken with a 4th-round pick, had some rocky seasons in his first couple years, but really figured things out in this past year and was an all-pro in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, like, what is how much of a difference really is it paying him 3 years, $12.3 million and, 3 years, $12 million? I mean, I just don't really understand, we're operating from a position of information deficit. We don't really know what the offer would have been, but I think we all expected it to be close to the top of the market. I think Michael Dixon's top of the market deal was like $4.1 million per year. He signed that last year or the year before. It's just surprising that even though John Harbaugh was the guy driving the ship in valuing special teams, like Eric DeCosta was the one signing the checks. He was the one who was keeping Morgan Cox and then Sam Cook, Justin Tucker, Nick Moore. I just thought it would get done. And obviously the fact that this dragged into free agency and the legal tampering period meant that they were farther apart than they had to be to get a deal done. But I just thought that, this would be a situation where a team would come in and then the Ravens would come over the top because you'd invested the 4th-round pick in this guy 4 years ago and you valued what he could give you, not just as a punter, but as a holder, as a locker room guy. I mean, he's, an asset to any locker room. And now you're stuck having to make a late round pick on a punter. And maybe this is a situation where, Randy Brown and his expertise, even though I think we associate it mostly with kicking, is going to pay off for you in the long run. But man, I'm not going to have any fun like going into the punter tape and giving them a punter in the 6th or 7th round. This is becoming like the least fun offseason for mock drafts I can remember.
Yeah, it is. And that's the most important thing is think of the mock drafts when you make your when you build your team. I mean, I think that there is perhaps no other team that is better positioned to draft a punter than the team that hoards compensatory picks like the Ravens, because you are just going to be probably flush with 6th and 7th rounders that, you can. How many picks are the Ravens projected to have, by the way, even after trading away their first round pick in 2026?
10 for right now.
10. And what, 4 6th round picks, I believe?
Well, they only have 2 day 2 picks currently, so the bulk of them are on day 3.
Yeah. So if you can't find,
we should be knowing more about their comp picks in the coming days.
Gotcha. So you should be able to find a punter, you would think there. The Ravens found, Tyler Loop there, and the results so far are mixed, but you should be able to find a punter on day 3 of the draft. Let's talk about Dre'Mont Jones going to the New England Patriots. To me, this the trade for Maxx Crosby made the urgency to bring back Dre'Mont Jones a whole lot less. Dre'Mont Jones, of course, the Ravens traded for at last year's deadline in November, had 2.5 sacks over the rest of the season, immediately became the Ravens' top pass rusher, but not a perfect player. Going to be 29 years old. Ravens are just going to have to rely heavily on Mike Green now to take a leap in his second season.
Yeah, and they have a great all-pro talent in Maxx Crosby now, and he is going to be the fulcrum for that pass rush. If Nami Madubuike comes back, then that's another fulcrum there. But they just need dudes, man. To have a top 3 of Maxx Crosby, Mike Green, Tavius Robinson is fine, but then you get to the 4th, and it's like a Adisa Isaac. Is he going to be healthy? And how highly are you willing to invest either in free agency or in the draft to bring in a 5th or a 6th? I mean, I think typically, if I can remember my roster projections from years past, I'm usually giving them 5 or 6 edge rushers, 5 or 6 outside linebackers on that 53-man roster. And right now they have like basically 3.5 reliable players. So I think this isn't a surprise. Like as soon as the Ravens brought in Maxx Crosby, even before they brought in Maxx Crosby, we were all expecting Dre'Mont Jones to get a nice chunk of change, and credit to him. And I'm hopeful that he's able to have a great year there with the Patriots and everything that they have going on there. But this just kind of underlines how thin they are at certain positions that are extremely important to what Jesse Minter and Anthony Weaver want to do up front.
Yeah, and then Isaiah Likely signing a reported 3-year, $40 million deal with the Giants. If those numbers sound familiar, it's because it's an almost identical deal to the one that Mark Andrews signed with the Ravens, although that's just on its face. Guarantees could totally change this. Mark Andrews' deal is basically a 2-year deal that includes a team option for 2028. So sometimes something is reported as a 3-year deal. The numbers often change depending on guarantees here. But Jonas, did the Ravens fumble this by the way that Isaiah Likely's contract negotiations were handled? Because the Ravens just handed a 3-year, $39.5 million deal to Mark Andrews when Isaiah Likely goes to his old coach in John Harbaugh, and he is several years younger and still has some upside, but not looking like a tight end one, where Mark Andrews faded down the stretch and has the potential to age more rapidly.
I guess I'll turn around with this question to you, Paul. If the Ravens hadn't re-signed Mark Andrews and he'd hit free agency, do you think he would have eclipsed Isaiah Likely? Do you think it would have come in at the same level in the same way that we are right now?
I think Mark Andrews would have signed for less money or less years.
I agree, especially after just having a pretty lethargic finish to that year. Again, like you turn on the tape of him against Pittsburgh, he's not able to run away from Chuck Clark. With all due respect, even though Mark Andrews is getting up there in terms of him getting close to that physical peak, or that athletic peak, maybe he's on the other side of it. But you should be able to do better. And when I asked Eric DeCosta at the combine about the deal, he said pretty bluntly, like they expect Mark Andrews to be closer to the guy that they remember. So this is going to be a fascinating comparison point. Like I think everyone is going to be stat watching the next for the first 2 months of the season. If Isaiah Likely goes in there and is an immediate 5-catch 60-yard target for John Harbaugh and Jackson Dart in that Giants offense, and Mark Andrews is barely getting 2 or 3 targets a game, and he's struggling as a run blocker, which is again not exactly a strength for Isaiah Likely, but he's a little bit more flexible in terms of where you can move him. You can have him as a sniffer, you can have him in line, you can have him lined up out wide. It's just going to be, I think, a natural comparison point, especially now that they are under contract with deals that are remarkably similar, at least on their face.
Yeah. And then one more bit of news that came in while we were podcasting, Jonas. The Ravens are reportedly non-tendering running back Keaton Mitchell. He is a restricted free agent, so the Ravens would have to tender him. Are you surprised at all by this move? A rocky season for Keaton Mitchell. Inactive for the first several weeks, gets an opportunity, plays well. Ravens fans are throwing up their arms like, why didn't we make him active earlier in the season? And then suffers injuries down the stretch and isn't able to be as impactful. But new coaching staff, new offensive coordinator in Declan Doyle. He was an undrafted free agent. I guess you could replace him through the draft, but were you surprised that the Ravens decide that they don't really want Keaton Mitchell?
Well, I mean, like it's. I
At
don't
that
think it's
price
a matter
point.
of want, right? I think I'm
Yeah.
surprised that they are making that decision right now. They had until 4 p.m. Wednesday to give him a tender. Same deal as the exclusive rights free agents like Corey Bullock, CJ Okoye. My proposal for the Ravens in their my 10-point plan for the Ravens that has now completely fallen apart was like, you can offer him the $3.6 million right of first refusal tender. It's just a cheap 1-year deal. You could offer him the second round tender, which is 1 year, $5.8 million. Or you could just try to sign him to an extension that is kind of the happy medium. My prediction was 2 years, $4 million per year. And it is kind of based on the fact that, like, the Ravens for this offense want explosive plays. Keaton Mitchell, when he's been in the lineup, has been Mr. Explosive. But you compare that to his usage, and are you willing to pay $6 million to a guy who in 3 seasons has just over 300 offensive snaps? That's a little dicey to me. So I think it's still a possibility that the Ravens could bring him back. But again, if the Ravens don't feel good about their offensive line and they feel like, you get something out of Justice Hill, who did not have a good year last year. I mean, you take away, at least as a runner, you take away that one runaway jaunt against the Kansas City Chiefs. His average in yards per carry was paltry. And, you have Derrick Henry. You feel good about what he brings. But if the Ravens want to reallocate their resources, or, get him to a deal that is maybe more backloaded as an extension, if it's 2 or 3 years, probably not 3 years, let's say 2 years, then I guess it makes sense. But this is not the PR friendly move that the Ravens can. They can deal with it right now, but this is not a PR friendly deal because of just how much love there is for Keaton Mitchell in Baltimore and how much frustration there was aimed at John Harbaugh over not even activating him over those first 4 weeks, 8 weeks, however long he was on the sideline for.
I mean, I think Ravens fans who have been very vocal about Keaton Mitchell would say, well, the low snap count is because the coaching staff wouldn't play him when they should have. I mean, remember halfway through the season, Todd Monken says, we are coming up with a game plan for Keaton Mitchell. We want to get him involved. And fans were saying, well, why wasn't he more involved from the get-go? I mean, they kept going with Rasheen Ali, who I know to them was more important in special teams, but they felt like Keaton Mitchell showed more in his first couple seasons in the NFL and deserved more playing time. And maybe with more playing time, either with the Ravens or another team, he can finally show it. One
Yeah,
more
and we should
deal.
we should do like a 1-year retrospective on all the people who Todd Monken / the larger offensive failings might have cost significant money to, because I think DeAndre Hopkins is on that list. Clearly, Tyler Linderbaum is not on that list. Keaton Mitchell is on that list. Isaiah Likely might be on that list, although most of his struggles, I think, were tied to that training camp foot injury that he suffered. But yeah, that there were a lot of guys who we expected a lot more from, who are just now hitting free agency and are probably getting less money than we all thought they would 6 months ago.
Yeah. Jonas, my favorite topic is backup quarterbacks. The Ravens lock in their backup quarterback in a deal that broke Saturday per ESPN, is a 2-year deal for Tyler Huntley worth up to $11 million. Again, on its face, not far off of Cooper Rush's 2-year deal worth up to $12 million that he signed last year. This deal for Huntley has $5 million base salary. It's funny that the Ravens move on from obviously Tyler Huntley has had numerous stints with the Ravens, and they just keep coming back to each other. It would seem that Cooper Rush is going to be a cap casualty at some point because he still has 1 year left on his deal. But good bit of business to reward Tyler Huntley after he was more than serviceable, filling in for Lamar Jackson last year.
Yeah, went 2-0, did a good job of moving the chains. Again, not a prodigious athlete, and I think that limits what he can do as a passer. He's obviously a capable scrambler. He's good in that structure stuff. You worry a little bit about the sack rate, which has been a problem for him over his career, but it was also just a problem for the Ravens in general last year. Lamar had his worst ever sack rate. But yeah, I guess just now you wait for what exactly the Cooper Rush decision is, because if they cut him before June 1st, I think it's just about $500,000 in cap savings. If you designate him a post June 1 cut, I think it's over $2 million in savings, but obviously that's not realized until the summertime. So I think the expectation is that the Ravens, maybe bring in a very, very cheap free agent quarterback or use one of those day 3 picks on a guy that they see as a potential backup. But, as we've talked about in the past, as I'm sure we'll talk about this offseason, it's so hard to find guys with like translatable traits on day 3 that give you any shot of being a long-term backup. Because if you can throw the ball far, if you can run fast, then you are probably not lasting outside of the top 100. And it's
Unless
the
you're
hit
Joe
rate.
Milton.
Well, Joe Milton is not in a good place right now after a brief time in the sunshine. It's hard to find guys 5th round, 6th round, 7th round who are worth a damn. Like if they're accurate, then they're not especially athletic. If they're athletic, they're not especially accurate. So it's just a real tough spot to be in. But again, quarterback 3 is not going to be what keeps the Ravens away from the Super Bowl this year.
You would hope not. Bring back Devin Leary, baby. All right. So quick update on where we're at and where the Ravens are at with their own free agents. Tyler Linderbaum to the Raiders, Jordan Stout to the Giants, Tyler Huntley back to the Ravens, Isaiah Likely to the Giants, Dre'Mont Jones to the Patriots, and then still out there are these Ravens free agents: Charlie Kohler, Ardarius Washington, Keaton Mitchell, Chidobe Awuzie, Patrick Ricard, Kyle Van Noy, Jake Hummel, Alohi Gilman, Joseph Noteboom, Brent Urban, Tylan Wallace, Taven Bryan, David Ajabo, Daniel Falele, and DeAndre Hopkins. If you are following our free agency bracket, we have lost a few names. Jonas, Khalil Mack, who made it all the way to our championship round, re-signed with the LA Chargers. That is an unfortunate update for our bracket. Monteric Brown, the cornerback, re-signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's off the board. Cade Mays, as mentioned, a 4 seed in our offensive line region. He is off the board as well. And so is Olamide Zaccheaus, the wide receiver who re-signs with the Atlanta Falcons. But our champion, Elijah Vera Tucker, guard, is still alive. I don't know if the Ravens will sign him after already sinking their assets into another former Jets offensive lineman. Why not reconstruct the Jets offensive line? That's really what everybody says is always continually the strength of the New York Jets is their offensive line. Bring in Elijah Vera Tucker. Why not?
Paul, if you knew that Monteric Brown's nickname was Buster, would you have put him 1 round further, 2 rounds further?
I would have had him win the whole thing. He would have been a bracket buster, if you think about it.
Big picture thoughts, Paul. I think just to kind of reiterate what we said or what I said like last week or 2 weeks ago, time is a construct at this point. Doesn't really hold any meaning for me. Like there is nothing. I think it was an inevitability that you would feel worse about this Ravens roster right now, Monday, March 9th, 3:11 p.m., than we did about this Ravens roster March 9th, 2025. And the amount of holes that have sprung, the amount of leaks that have sprung has been surprising, between Stout leaving, Linderbaum not being retained. Now Keaton Mitchell is in the wind, apparently. It just goes to show like how much work there is to be done. And we haven't even talked about like the Lamar Jackson of it all. I mean, obviously, I think we are expecting something to happen, whether it's a restructure or a new deal for the Ravens to get cap compliant by Wednesday. But man, I know that the Vegas markets, I think, have the Ravens as the AFC favorites for the Super Bowl after the Maxx Crosby deal. But it feels like it's not paper thin, but it feels like it is a very, very top-heavy proposition that's based on a lot of momentum and inertia and hope that certain guys either bounce back or, in Nani Madubuike's case, literally come back from injury.
Yeah, and I think Maxx Crosby is doing a lot for Ravens fans' mental health right now. I mean, the fact that they went out and made a move for him, if they hadn't traded for Maxx Crosby and you lose Linderbaum and Stout and Likely and Dre'Mont Jones this early in free agency, there would have been a lot of Ravens fans on the ledge right now. But the fact that they traded for Maxx Crosby, got that difference maker up front, means a lot. And you add in the Lamar Jackson, uncertainty. That's obviously something that the Ravens have to get figured out at some point soon. It just feels like at this point, everything's unsettled. I mean, we are hours into the legal tampering period. So many moves could still be made by the Ravens and need to be made. But so far, they take 2 massive steps forward with the Maxx Crosby deal, and then they take several smaller steps back by losing all of these other guys. So it's going to be up to them to try to get some of these holes plugged, because they're taking some big swings.
Defense is better, clearly. Offense is worse, clearly. Special teams are worse, clearly. That's where we stand.
That's So just throwing the towel right now on the whole season. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll have another episode for you at some point soon. Go get some breaking news over the next hours and days as we monitor the Lamar Jackson contract situation, as we monitor the rest of these free agents who could sign in Baltimore, their own free agents, whether they retain these guys. Like, rate, review, subscribe. Subscribe to the Baltimore Banner, thebanner.com. $1 for 6 months.
Shout out to the Baltimore Banner.
Carmelo Anthony knows that the Baltimore Banner is your best place to get all of these updates. Jonas and Gianna have a free agency tracker going for you, and they have other articles as well. So does columnist Kyle Goon. For Jonas Shaffer, I'm Paul Mancano. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we will catch you next time.